Hey, David Brewster here with another 3 for All, and this is 3 Skwisgaar Skwigelf Licks from 2007. And that doesn't really roll off the tongue. Skwisgaar Skwigelf. But if we're talking about Skwisgaar, we're obviously talking about Dethklok and the show Metalocalypse from Adult Swim. And if we're specifically talking about Skwisgaar, then we're actually talking about Brendon Small, the creator, of that show. And even though, Dethklok and Metalocalypse are a joke, I mean, it's literally an animated, show that was extremely popular over 10 years ago. But, that show is obviously a joke. It's meant to be humorous and funny and kind of shocking and odd. But Brendon definitely isn't a joke. He's a serious, musician, comedian, writer, performer, producer. I mean, he has a very long resume, but he's a Berklee graduate. I think he graduated in 1997. He also studied writing and comedy at Emerson College around that same time. And then before Metalocalypse, he had a show on Adult Swim called Home Movies. If you're not familiar with that show, I highly recommend the episode Guitarmageddon, and that has Dwayne's guitar lesson in it. Guitarmageddon is one of my favorite, animated, episodes, or, I mean, I just find it extremely hilarious. And when I first saw that episode, I didn't know who Brendon Small was, but I was hooked. I thought, whoever made this episode, is a guitar player. I mean, he knows, what lessons were like and what learning was like and how hard it is. But between Home Movies and when Metalocalypse started, he actually he did do some voice acting for the Venture Brothers, and he also had cameo roles in like Aqua Teen, Squidbillies, Frisky Dingo. He's even in an episode of Reno 911, which I love that show too. But then Metalocalypse came about in around 2006. I think it premiered like in August of 2006. And then he released the Dethklok album the following year. He actually toured as Dethklok. I think he had Mike Neely and Brian Beller and Gene Hoglan, on drums, the metal, legend. And the album charted really high. And at the time, that was the highest charting death metal album on the Billboard 200. And the Dethklok II album actually charted number 15 on the Billboard 200, and that is the highest charting death metal album in history of the Billboard charts. And that's impressive. So even if you don't really know the show or you think it's kind of silly, it's legit, and even though it kind of disappeared for a little while, Dethklok did actually play for like an Adult Swim kind of festival or a celebration, and they kind of reformed. It was the first time they officially played as Dethklok in years, because Brendon kind of had some copyright and some legal issues and stuff that came up when the show ended, and Adult Swim, held on to the name, a lot of, the episodes and the music. So he formed his own group, Galacticon, and he wanted to continue, playing Dethklok and making music like that. And I really do hope that maybe Adult Swim and Brendon can kind of mend their problems or issues or whatever, or bring the show back. All right, all the licks and examples from this lesson come from the 2007 Dethklok album. And I thought about, cutting up little scenes from the show and, adding, like clips or whatever, kind of mimicking what I've done for other 3 for All lessons, but with Skwisgaar. But I thought, well, that's going to cause, I mean, there's already, legal problems between Brendon and Adult Swim, and I don't want to jump in the middle of all that. So I just thought, well, I'll just grab licks and we'll talk about, Skwisgaar, which means we're talking about Brendon, and just kind of go from there. So I do apologize. I wanted to do more, but I didn't really want to get some weird legal tag or a copyright strike or, I love Adult Swim and I love the show too, but I don't want to, insult or offend or get into some legal issues with Adult Swim, because I like those guys. I love, that channel. I don't really know, specifically Brendon's musical influences, but by, putting this lesson together and kind of going through, this music, it's obvious. You can see little, pieces of Paul Gilbert licks. You can see Yngwie ideas. You can see Satriani, Zakk Wylde, Dimebag. If you look through, Dethklok's music or Brendon Small's, output, you'll notice little habits and kind of, things that he likes to do. But you'll also notice like kind of signature or telltale licks and phrases from other, famous guitarists. So if you're a metal fan and you want to challenge yourself, check out the Dethklok album and buy the transcription book and learn the music, because there's some great guitar all over that stuff. I mean, even though it's a comedy animated show from Adult Swim, the guitar work is killer. All right, the first lick is from the song Awaken. Okay, for this lick, he's actually, it's a fill, and it's harmonized. And the first time I ever heard the song, it reminded me of Racer X, because he's string skipping arpeggios and it's harmonized. And I thought, wow, that kind of sounds like, Bruce and Paul, back in the day. But we're doing a D major string skipped arpeggio right here. This would be guitar 1's part. And there you can see we're just skipping through a D major arpeggio. Answers that with the second guitar part that's harmonized, and that's D major string skipped arpeggio right here. And that's literally what Paul and Bruce used to do in Racer X. One would grab a lower arpeggio and the other would grab a higher one, and they would find those points and those areas to kind of connect and harmonize. And that sounds wicked. You get two guitarists playing arpeggios, synced up together, and it's terrifying. It sounds amazing. And I'm a big fan of that style, of playing. And those are cool arpeggios, too. The next lick comes from the solo in Go Forth and Die. And I really like this song. And that's a great episode it came from, too. But this is really cool because he's kind of flirting with E harmonic minor, and then he flips and does a series of arpeggios up at the top too. And once again, it's harmonized at the end with the string skipping arpeggio. So Brendon has a habit of, locking into an arpeggio, and then he'll just double it or harmonize it, and it sounds really cool. But this one's like this. Really cool. So he's starting off with an E minor arpeggio. And then there's that raised seventh, signaling harmonic minor. So he just kind of skillfully, moves to the arpeggio, creates a little melodic line, and then targets, that raised seventh, which is D sharp right there. I love this little move where he opens up the B and then he hammers on D sharp to E and then B to C. And then he targets that F sharp right there too, which would be the ninth technically. But that sounds really cool. It's exotic. And then immediately right there, he's going to jump up and he's going to grab an E minor arpeggio. It's string skipped. And then it changes to C major. And I love that little movement, where you hear it change. And then the harmony part. And I love the D sharp and E there at the end. Just, kind of reinstating that harmonic minor. Really cool. Really cool solo. The next lick comes from the song The Lost Vikings, and if you're familiar with the Van Halen piece Spanish Fly, there's a very famous, two-string run where he climbs up the B and the high E string. And he literally lifted that from Al Di Meola, which Al's been doing that forever, Return to Forever and the solo stuff. And Ed admittedly, loves Al Di Meola, Alan Halsworth, and a bunch of other guitarists. So he borrowed those ideas from Al Di Meola. But the interesting thing about, this lick from the Lost Vikings is he's using that kind of Al Di Meola, highway, I guess. But he's playing it like in a different way, because typically when you hear Meola play it, or even Van Halen, they're ascending and they're climbing, and you hear it, kind of doing this. But with this lick, we're running the same scale, but we're doing it backwards, and we're also using pull-offs. And he also kind of gradually climbs up the scale like this. And slowly, we're just doing this. Something like that. Really cool lick, and it's different. It gives it a much busier sound compared to the typical, Meola or Van Halen type sequence. Here's a bonus lick for this lesson, and this comes from the song Birthday, Death Day, and this features some stretch pentatonics, and definitely stretch pentatonics have been around for quite a while. I mean, you can hear Paul Gilbert and Zakk Wylde, and even people like Eric Johnson and some other players use them. And this is a really interesting lick because you're string skipping, stretch pentatonic phrases. So if you're not really familiar with stretch pentatonics, just think of like E minor pentatonic, the box right here. So that's the shape most people are familiar with. But then if you combine that with the shape right above it, I guess you can think of that as shape 2, right here. But if you combine those two scales and play at 3 notes per string like this, those are known as stretch pentatonics. And then what we're going to do is we're going to target the top, and we're going to descend with pull-offs right here. So we're grabbing what? A, G, and E, and then we're going to grab C, A, and G on the G string. So we're doing this. And that's the pattern. Now I want you to double that on the B and the D strings. So we're going to do 2 sets of that string skip, here and here. That's basically the lick, but it looks like this slowly. At the end, he does that 3 times in a row. And then at the end, he basically bends the 15th fret on the G up a half step. And then he catches the 15th fret. It's almost like a double stop bend, but he's catching the 15th fret on the B string. And then it's over. But we got... Alright, that's going to wrap this look at 3 licks from Skwisgaar Skwigelf and, Brendon Small's musical shred mastery or whatever. And I really respect this guy. I mean, aside from the fact that he's, talented and he's funny and he's creative and he's a writer and a comedian and a producer and all this other stuff, he's also a guitarist, and he went to Berklee and everything, for crying out loud. So it's like, okay, I really want to be your best friend, or, let's hang out and jam or something. It's like, he seems like he would be, a cool guy to hang out with. All right, well, leave some feedback and some comments, and please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more lessons and material. Thank you.